Welcome to the deep dive. Today, our mission is, well, it's all about distilling the core insights from some truly extraordinary materials you sent our way.
Right. We're looking at a memoir and some accompanying research.
And it all details one of the most, improbable and just consequential academic journeys of our time.
It absolutely is. We're talking about the journey of Dr. Tilaye Tadesse.
Yeah.
We're going to track his path from, and this is amazing, from herding cattle as a boy in rural Ethiopia,
Yeah.
all the way to becoming a top space weather scientist at NASA.
Wow.
So this deep dive, it's really less about the science itself and more about the human spirit. It's a framework for understanding how these huge challenges, poverty, political violence, even addiction, weren't roadblocks.
They're catalysts.
Exactly. Catalysts for achieving something great.
We should really set the stage for this achievement because the scale of it is just breathtaking.
It really is.
This is a man who didn't just succeed in, some high-resource environment. He navigated immense socio-political turmoil.
The fall of a whole regime, periods of just violent chaos.
All while working inside an educational system with almost no resources. So to go from that to solving complex solar physics problems for NASA, that's a trajectory that just forces you to look at every single detail.
And to understand that drive, you have to start at the very beginning.
So where does it begin?
Dr. Tadesse was born into, well, profound poverty in a place called Geyiraro in eastern Hararge, Ethiopia.
And his early life was, it was defined by this relentless labor, right?
Yeah, the daily duty of herding cattle across this vast, difficult terrain.
And it's right there that his determination really starts to form. We learn that his thirst for knowledge was so strong that he was willing to do almost anything.
Anything. Walking 7 miles, that's 11 kilometers each way.
Often barefoot.
Often barefoot.
And that walk wasn't just a physical hardship.
No, not at all. It was an act of defiance. His own grandfather was dead set against modern education.
He saw it as a corrupting influence.
Exactly. So this early struggle shows us that his first big test of perseverance was actually within his own family. He was willing to sacrifice comfort for knowledge.
What's also so fascinating is the cultural environment there in Geyiraro. It was this mosaic of different identities, but they all coexisted in a really remarkable way.
It wasn't just, living next to each other. It was deep integration. You had Amhara and Oromo cultures blending, Christian and Muslim neighbors fasting and mourning together.
And this shaped his whole worldview. His Amhara father and uncle were completely embraced and respected within the Oromo governance framework, the Gada system.
Right. And for anyone who doesn't know, the Gada system is this ancient, incredibly complex democratic structure. It governs Oromo life, emphasizing consensus and rotating leadership.
So why was his father's acceptance into that system so important for his story?
It taught him a huge lesson, maybe the most central one, that identity is earned.
It's earned through your actions, your character, not just by who your parents were.
Exactly. He saw with his own eyes that respect could bridge these deep ethnic divides.
But the family heritage was also full of contradictions, reflecting Ethiopia's complex history.
Very much so. The memoir is brutally honest about it. His maternal grandfather was a respected priest and a feudal landlord, but he was also a slave owner.
And that contradiction, that paradox, really weighed on Dr. Tadesse later in life.
It did. It's a powerful look at the moral complexities he inherited. And at the same time, his paternal grandfather had made his own journey decades earlier, leaving conflict behind to find peace. So he was steeped in this history of both complexity and striving.
The human relationships were complex, but the natural world, that was maybe even more immediately dangerous.
Oh, absolutely. The sources paint these vivid pictures of an untamed wilderness, dodging a massive falling boulder.
Constant threats from wild boars, leopards.
And the hyenas, the chilling, constant presence of hyenas.
The hyenas are such an incredible part of this story. They weren't just seen as predators in Hararge culture, were they?
No, not at all. They were viewed through this lens of really rich folklore. They were seen as spirits, messengers. Harming one was a huge taboo.
There was this deep, almost spiritual respect. We read about his father, who would actually go out and speak quietly to the hyenas when they got too close to the house.
And they would leave. They'd retreat. It's this intimate understanding that led to an absolutely extraordinary event.
The story about the impala carcass.
Yes. During a really bad dry season, a hyena apparently sought out his father for help. A leopard had stashed a carcass high up in a tree, and the hyena couldn't get it.
So his father, he helped it down.
He did. He saw this shared hardship and obliged.
And then what happens next is just, it's unforgettable.
It really is. About a month later, the same hyena, as if in repayment, found a baby goat that had gone missing from the family's farm.
And returned it.
Returned it completely unharmed, right back to the farmstead. It speaks to this deep, ancient contract of mutual respect between humans and the wild.
It's an incredible foundation, learning these lessons from the natural world long before you ever see a science lab.
But that ancient contract, it couldn't stand up to modern political chaos.
The year 1991, the fall of the Derg military regime and the chaotic rise of the EPRDF.
And that transition just plunged Hararge into violent turmoil. It created these huge power vacuums.
And Dr. Tadesse was right in the middle of it. He had to flee into the jungle multiple times to escape battles between the OLF and EPRDF forces.
And this political violence leads directly to the central tragedy of his life.
The murder of his father, the man who talked to hyenas.
He was killed by armed men who were posing as OLF fighters.
But they weren't.
No. The source material is very clear. It was later confirmed these were actually EPRDF forces carrying out a calculated campaign to discredit the OLF and so ethnic division.
And the most harrowing detail, his younger brother survived by falling under his father's body as he was shot.
Just a miracle.
So the weight of that murder, the political betrayal, it sent him spiraling.
An absolute tailspin. And the worst part is he didn't even get the confirmed story until he was a freshman at Addis Ababa University.
And a complete stranger told him.
A stranger. That shock it completely derailed him. Academically, spiritually, everything.
And that unresolved grief, it drove him straight into addiction.
A habit that was, sadly common among students dealing with trauma and pressure. He got into heavy use of khat.
Which is a local narcotic leaf, sort of like a mild amphetamine.
Right. And that, along with alcohol and cigarettes, severely impaired his studies.
And the consequences were immediate. His grades dropped so badly, he was barred from the applied physics track.
Which is his lifelong dream.
He was relegated to teaching physics instead. It must have felt like the end.
It was a classic case of trauma manifesting as self-destruction. But there's another cultural layer here. Beyond the addiction, he was carrying the immense weight of the Amhara tradition of blood revenge.
The spiritual need to seek retribution for his father's murder.
A huge burden.
But then comes the turnaround, a decisive spiritual liberation in March 2001.
It happened after a local pastor gave him this chilling warning that if he kept going down that path, he wouldn't live to see the end of the year.
And that event, as he describes it, was a complete break.
It was. Instantly, he says, the physical cravings for khat, alcohol, cigarettes, gone.
But it was more than that.
Much more. It freed him from that toxic desire for blood revenge. It was a recovery that didn't just save his life, it recalibrated his entire moral compass.
And that liberation was the launch pad for his academic comeback. 8 years after his undergrad, he goes back, gets a scholarship, and starts his master's in physics.
And his MSc research, it dove right into the breaking index of pulsars.
Okay, so for the non-astrophysicist out there, why is that specific area so important?
Right, so pulsars are these. They're rapidly rotating neutron stars left over from a supernova,
Okay.
and they spin down, but incredibly slowly. The breaking index. It basically just measures that slowdown rate.
And understanding that tells you what?
It gives scientists incredible insight into the internal physics of these super, super dense objects, how they lose energy, how the magnetic fields evolve. It's really cutting-edge astronomy.
And that work was his ticket to the big leagues.
To the international stage, yeah. He applied for a PhD at the prestigious Max Planck Institute in Germany. And it's important to note he got in, but only after 3 rejections.
Wow, that persistence.
And when he finally walked through those doors, he was the first black student in the Institute's entire history.
But his acceptance was just the start of the challenge. The sources make it clear the technical gap he faced was just staggering.
It was huge. The German project required immediate fluency in astrophysics, advanced numerical modeling, and 2 specific programming languages, C and Fortran.
Skills he had basically zero background in.
0. So this wasn't just catching up. He had to retrain his entire skill set in real time. He had 6 months to teach himself C and Fortran from scratch.
From textbooks while still teaching back in Ethiopia.
It's the kind of pressure that would break most people. It just shows that the biggest barrier he ever faced wasn't intellect, it was lack of resources.
But he did it, and it paid off, leading to a foundational contribution in solar physics.
He devised these new numerical techniques to calculate the 3-dimensional structure of the solar coronal magnetic fields.
And for the listener, why is getting that 3D structure so important? Why was it so hard before?
It's absolutely critical for prediction. The sun is a sphere, and its magnetic fields, which drive space weather, they loop and twist in 3 dimensions.
So older models were too simple.
They often flatten the geometry, which led to less accurate predictions. Dr. Tadesse's work, using data from the High-Node Solar Probe, created a model that finally accounted for that spherical geometry. He gave scientists a truly spatial, dynamic map of the sun's magnetic influence.
And that's why NASA came knocking. I love the little anecdote he shares about German academia, though. He saw another student just openly say, "I don't know," to a bunch of questions.
Right. And that comfort with admitting what you don't know was so different from the pressure for absolute certainty he'd felt in the Ethiopian academic culture.
It's a great point. It's a reminder that a huge part of his journey was adapting not just scientifically, but culturally and intellectually to different environments.
That willingness to embrace uncertainty is fundamental to high-level science.
And that adaptability is what brought him to the U.S. He got an invitation to integrate the software he developed into NASA's modeling center.
Which leads directly to his current life-saving work. He's now a research engineer and space weather scientist at NASA's Johnson Space Center.
In the Space Radiation Analysis Group, SRAG. His job is literally to protect human life in space.
He's constantly monitoring solar radiation in real time. We're talking solar flares, coronal mass ejections.
CMEs.
Yeah.
What exactly is a CME, and why is it such a huge start for something like the Artemis missions?
A CME is a massive eruption of solar wind and magnetic fields. Billions of tons of plasma launched into space at millions of miles per hour.
So if one of those hits an astronaut on the moon,
Where they have no protection from Earth's atmosphere or magnetic field, the radiation dose can be catastrophic. Acute radiation sickness, cancer risk, it can fry all the critical electronics.
so Dr. Tadesse's job is to build the predictive models that will keep the Artemis crews safe on their way to the moon and eventually Mars.
He's building the invisible shield for the next generation of explorers.
It's such an inspiring personal story, but the sources also make it clear this was a collective victory, too.
Yes. He points out that 3 students from his tiny dorm group at Addis Ababa University himself, Tesfaye Kebede and Tulu Bential, went on to earn PhDs in physics.
And today they are a solar physicist, a quantum engineer at General Electric, and a data scientist.
3 world changers from a single dorm room in Addis Ababa. It's incredible. And the story comes full circle with his advocacy work now. He's dedicated to his family, his wife Aquil, and the challenge of raising a son with Fragile X syndrome and autism.
Fragile X is a genetic condition, the most common single-gene cause of autism. And because there's so little awareness in Ethiopia, his personal journey now drives him to advocate for others.
So when you step back and look at it all, what's the core lesson that Dr. Tadesse's life offers you, the person listening to this?
I think it's the ultimate proof that failure isn't a destination. He says failure is not something to be feared, but a stepping stone on the journey towards success. Every rejection, every setback, every dark period, they all became fuel for the next push forward.
And that raises a really important question for you to think about. Dr. Tadesse's journey didn't happen because he tried to copy some elite Western scientist. It happened because he used the unique foundation he built in Hararge, the resilience, the lessons from the Gata system, the quiet strength of his father, to solve problems others couldn't.
The greatest achievements come when we embrace our individuality.
Exactly. When we use our unique talents and our lived experiences to fulfill our purpose. So the question we want to leave you with is this. What unique talent do you carry that could change the world?